Here we go. Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. I have got the lovely Tony Forder. Again, I keep bagging you for interviews. Tell us about, say hello to everyone, show us your cover. You can tell I've barely spoken all week, can't you? I've gone all waffly. Say hello to everyone, show off the book cover for the Huntsman and any others. Show off your bliss as well if you want. Anything else?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks, Sam, for having me. And my name's Tony Forder. If you don't know me, most people don't. And I'm mainly here to talk about my new book, which is this one, The Huntsman. It's not the only reason I'm here, because hopefully we'll get some questions to answer. But yeah, that's what I'm here to talk about.
Go on then, tell us a little bit about it. We've just been discussing how do we discuss this book without giving spoilers. So good luck with that. I'll just sit here and drink and watch you.
Okay, thank you. So let's begin with the fact that it's the first book in a brand new UK crime series. It is set in Wiltshire. It's an area that I know quite well because I have family down there, so I feel as though I can write about it fairly authentically. And the main character is a DS Royston Chase. He works out of a very small village station with a number of PCSOs. And the reason that he's there becomes obvious in the book. I won't go into it, but that's, there is a reason for him working in a small station.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Sorry. I can't write anything in the comments from where I am. Please, can somebody tag Andrew Hooch for me and Leslie Lloyd? Thank you. Sorry, carry on. I've had a message from Andrew asking to be tagged so that he can find it. And
actually,
I can't do it from where we are.
I can think about the next bit. So, yeah, Chase is called out to a road traffic accident, which is unusual. But when he gets there, he finds out why. Because the person who caused the crash and died in it as well, one of the victims actually, was the ex-chief constable for the area, which is bad. But the worst part is that he had at some point alongside him in the car a young female who shouldn't have been there, and she also died. She couldn't be identified, and that causes obviously a major headache. So Chase was called out. He attends the scene. He discovers what's what, and he decides that, well, he's bound to get taken off the case because of who died, but he'll start investigating anyway. So he carries out an investigation, and he's soon made aware by senior officers that he needs to put it to bed very quickly, and before all the disturbing incidents and news is reported, because there's some detail that nobody wants to hear. So he knows that he has to really sort of get it done. But the second day, upturns a partner, and this introduces DC Claire Laney. Now he was expecting her, but she's rather been forced upon him, and she's a grizzled veteran who was once a DI and is now back down to DC, really just winding down the time until she retires. And he can't tell whether she's there to help, hinder, or perhaps spy on him. So they have an uneasy relationship to begin with. But the one thing they're certain about is that the more the case goes on, the more they investigate, the more they learn, the more they want to do a proper job and make sure that people who are involved in these indecent events are brought to justice. And although this puts them up against their own bosses and those who help the establishment, both of them actually find a common goal, and it unifies them and brings them closer together while they're solving the case.
That was a very good explanation. It's almost like you've been practicing.
Yeah, I've been practicing all day because of how badly I've nosed it up previously.
You really haven't. You've got a lot of hellos already. Oh, thank you, whoever's helped Andrew. Hi, Andrew. joined us. So we'll start with Mills. Hi, Mills. And
Mills.
This comment must be Donna, because hey, lovely Sam, hey, lovely AJ. I'm sure there's only Donna that calls you AJ.
Yeah, Donna's the only person who calls me AJ, as far as I know.
I'm right as well. I am right. I found it on my phone. TG and Leslie Lloyd and Tony Millington saying hello. Umesh, hello Umesh.
Hi everybody.
And Thomas, Steve Munoz. Wow, quite a lot of hellos already.
Yeah, so and lots of people I know there. That's for sure.
We've got a good bunch here, haven't we?
Yeah.
So
at least one American, Steve.
Yeah, we love Steve. Everybody loves Steve.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Huntsman and where the idea came from. Did Royston Chase, who's the lead detective in that, did he come first, or did the idea of the book come first? How did you get started with a new series when you've done so many Bliss books?
Yeah, well, the idea came first, and it, unusually for me, it came pretty much fully formed. So by that I mean I didn't know how every scene would pan out, or precisely what direction it would go in. But I did know how I wanted it to begin. I did know what I wanted it to happen, and I did know where it would ultimately lead. So that's very unusual for me, because I don't usually have all the bits and pieces when I start writing, but that came to me. So then it was really a matter of, well, who did it fit? Was it a Bliss book? And the more I thought about it, the more I didn't really see it as a good fit for Bliss. And I'm not really sure why, but I didn't hear his voice. So I was kind of contemplating starting a new series anyway, because, inevitably Bliss will come to an end, and I'd like to have another series.
I don't think you're allowed to say that Bliss will come to an end. I think we've put a ban on
that. Yeah, well, I mean, he's at some point, and I'd like to have another series running alongside it that I can slip into. So I just felt it was the right time. So then it was a matter of finding the right voice in my head. And then, because I'm a great believer in character, because I'm of the opinion that characters can make a good book better. I sat down and I really thought about who I wanted to be in this. And immediately I hit upon the idea of him being in on a small station with PCSOs. But then I felt I didn't want him to work alone necessarily, so that's where Claire Laney came into it.
Smile every time you say her name. I think she's my favourite person in the whole book.
I mean, she, as soon as she came to me, I could see her face, I could hear how she spoke, and I just found something in her that I really enjoyed, and because I did, I exploited that. So her extremely down to earth, don't give a rat's kind of attitude. I decided to fully exploit that, and mostly in a scene where the two first meet. That was kind of a highlight for me.
We should maybe have got you to read that section out.
Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do that for the reading.
Absolutely. That would be great. So it opens, as you said, with an interesting scene. There's an incident. There's an RTA, a road traffic accident. I don't even know if that's what we call them in the UK, but that's the thing that sticks in my head.
Yes, a road traffic
collision. I knew I was wrong. Collision in the UK. And we subsequently find out that the driver is drinking and has got away with a bit of drink driving. Like, I'm not lessening that as an offence. We are fiction.
Yes.
How did that whole scene come into being? Where does the idea for? I mean, it's in the first chapter. Can we say it, do you think?
I don't really know. It's in the first proper chapter because there's a small prologue before that.
Yeah,
But
of course. Yeah.
I know the incident that you want to mention, which is the very last thing that we find out in the chapter. But yeah, I mean, I think we can say, because it's so early on, and it's not, it's not a spoiler. I think we can say that the reason the police know he was engaged in a sexual act is because he left a part of him behind. That's the best way I can describe it.
I will say I've never read a book before. I'm going to be careful how I word this, with so many variations on the word for male genitalia. Every single word means a man for it.
I mean, there are, and so I used, I did use as many as I sort of thought it deserved. It is only a small point, but to be serious for a moment, I don't mean it's a small point in that it's a dirty mind.
Donna called this one. Donna said that when we're together, we go silly.
I genuinely didn't think about writing it until I reached the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
And as soon as I reached the end of the chapter, I thought to myself, well, how do they know he was engaged in a sexual act if she has been ejected from the car during the accident? And I thought, well, there is one obvious way. And as soon as it came to me, I thought, well, I've got to write that.
It's very clever, but I think you're the one with the devious mind, not me.
It did, well, you know what? It's horrible, but it made me laugh.
I don't think you could have got away with that scene without that.
Without the general
in the
theme.
Same way. Yes.
No, I couldn't.
You obviously could have done, but it's just your Tony twist on it, isn't it? It's that thing that makes a horrible subject more palatable to read about.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I like it when people get their comeuppance. Doesn't always happen, and it doesn't always even happen in my books. But I like it when it does, and I kind of felt that what happened to him was thoroughly deserved. And I couldn't think of a better way for it to happen, to be quite honest. And when it came to me, I just knew that was the answer, and I had to include it. And I deliberately left it until the final sentence, as a way to end the chapter.
Oh, and it did that, and I tell you what, it draws you into the book to find out what happens next. It really works. For anyone who hasn't pieced it together, you need to go and read the book, because we're not going to go any further with that scene. It had to be discussed, and it's very, very clever. Somebody's put that you've bought a webcam, so you won't have any flying phones this time.
Yeah, I have got a webcam. Yeah, so there will be no disasters because it's well away from me. Unlike last time, I put the whole thing down on top of me.
That was from Donna. So
happened to be sitting here wearing shorts at the time. So I thought to myself, oh my God, what is it showing? So I quickly
nothing. The screen went black after the phone. We should say to everyone that you had your phone plugged into earphones, and you forgot that it was there, and you dropped your arm. The phone flew like a Catherine wheel, but luckily it went dark, so we saw nothing.
Well, that's probably for the best, I must say. But for a moment there, I was terrified. But yeah, because I tend to gesticulate, so I pulled the thing completely off, and it flew up in the air, and I was lucky it didn't break, I suppose. Yeah, so webcam from now on. I've learnt my lesson.
Tony Millington says Bliss will retire, not come to an end, which I'm not going to ask you to comment on. I dread to think. I'm not going there. Somebody's put, I'm on a train home from Sunderland. That's how much I love you guys. I can't see who the comments are from. I'll see if I can refresh it on my phone. I can't see who's who here. Hi, Kaz. And it's fiction. Bliss can just stop aging. There you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know the story how I sort of, wrote myself into a corner, and yeah, I mean, unfortunately, he aged more than I wanted to off the page, and yeah, so I can't get away from that stark reality unless I actually do invent a way for him. The only genuine way he can stay on is he can either become a superintendent because they're allowed to work until they're 65, but that's never going to happen, not with Bliss. Or they can extend for up to 2 years.
Or there could be the voluntary thing. People come back and look at cold cases and
they do, but I mean, when you come back as a volunteer, should we say, or even employed by them as a citizen, you don't get to do all the good stuff. You tend to do all the boring bits. So yeah, I wouldn't wish that on him. Yeah, I imagine I'll extend his career by a little bit.
Good, glad to hear it. I'm going off the subject now before we get complaints. Somebody has said, evening girl, just arrived eating tea with the missus, and I can't see who I can't see who it was, but Donna's written, at least it wasn't a kilt about your shorts.
Yeah, I mean, I dread to think. I mean, it was bad enough. I mean, had that happened, yeah, I can't imagine. It's something I've blanked it from my mind. It's too horrific to contemplate.
We did have a similar incident where Lucy was interviewing Mike Craven, who writes as M.W. Craven, and as he stood up to turn his camera off at the end, it was very, very close indeed. I don't think so many people all over the country have ever leapt at the computer screens going, no! Before it was, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. Right, let's get back to the Huntsman. So, we've talked a little bit about where the idea for Royston Chase and Claire Laney came from. There are other characters, and Steve just mentioned Morris. Is he a Steve Miller homage?
Yeah, not quite. It's not Maurice. Yeah. I mean, Morris, I've done a character like him before in one of my Bliss books, a spook, basically, from MI5. And I did one in If Fear Wins called Monday. That's all you ever knew. That was his name, Monday. And I've often wanted to sort of explore him a bit further, but I've never really found the right story. So when this came along, I felt because there was I have to add that in addition to being an ex-chief constable, the bloke who dies is also a knight of the realm. So I kind of felt the establishment who like to protect themselves would inevitably find a way to try and keep all this story out of the news. So I introduced Morris into it, and yeah, he was again. I really enjoyed writing him, and I'd like to write him again. I don't know how I can get him back in, but if I can find a way, I will, because yeah, I enjoyed his character too.
Absolutely, and throughout the book, you've introduced lots of new characters. It's a small team, but it's still a large cast, and we get to meet some of the community.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really glad that you've gone with a small village kind of community, but with access to the wider policing network for things that they need.
Yeah.
Because I'd imagine that in small towns, you don't get the same kind of crimes that you get.
No.
And when something like you've created happens, that's a huge story in a small village.
Yeah, well, I do a couple of lines from the PCSO, Alison May. It has a couple of throwaway lines about the kind of crimes that she's used to investigating. People complaining about sheep and that kind of stuff, So yeah, it is a very, it's a very small village environment, and the surrounding area is not well populated either. So I wanted to kind of create that, and I envisaged this place, and I couldn't use a proper place because of what goes on there. So I invented this village called Little Soley, and I called it Little Soley because when I was researching the area, there's a name, there's a village there called Crooked Soley, and I thought, what a great name! I'd love to live in a place like that, Crooked Soley. But I couldn't use it, so I kind of thought I'll keep the Soley and put something else in. So it became Little Soley, and I envisaged it right on the border of Wiltshire and Berkshire. And when I was down there, I drove around, and I actually found a place that's absolutely ideal. And although I'd already written about it, and the book was finished, when I saw the place, I thought, yeah, this could easily be Little Soley, because I didn't know if I'd kind of got it quite right. But yeah, I liked the kind of small time feel, but a big time crime, and with heat coming from all directions, really.
Yeah, I really like that. I know they're my favourite kind of things to read, something that's set in a small village and it's kind of contains things more.
Yeah,
I do
well,
love that kind of thing.
I suppose in many ways in those kind of books, they're often referred to as kind of cozy crime. And this clearly isn't cozy by any stretch of the imagination. But it just felt right to me to create this place rather than having working out of one of the HQs there. I just felt that was right. And we'd have a very small team, so it's him, Claire, and Alison May. Now there are various PCSOs who are supposed to work there, but I created Alison because she wants to be a detective, and because I'm creating a new series from scratch. I want to see development across the series. So she was a character who I want to see develop, and and eventually become a detective in her own right.
And she's keen and she's helpful and she's friendly and insightful.
Yeah.
And she's still learning, so she's checking things, checking theories and things as she goes to see if she's along the lines that they're looking for.
Yeah.
There's so much room for growth with her as a character as you go. But is it going to be hard to kind of for the world to seep into that personality of hers?
Well, there are various issues you face when you create something like this that you think about afterwards, and you think, oh, I'll get around them. So, for instance, with Claire, it's inevitable. I mean, as it is with my Bliss stuff, inevitably people get promoted, and promotion often means moving on. So, if she becomes a DC, she won't be working with them, if you know what I mean, unless they move, unless they're relocated. So I've got to keep all those options open. So whilst the first one is, they're based in the village, and certainly for the second one they will be as well. Whether they stay there, whether they get sucked into either the Swindon HQ or the one in Devizes, I don't know. I haven't got that far yet in planning for what's going to happen to them. But at the moment, she's a very Alison is a really nice person who wants to get on and wants to do right by other people. And so she's I almost called him Bliss then. Chase sees this in her and invites her into the investigation to sort of give her views. And I liked that about his character as well as hers.
One thing that I really like about Chase, and there's a lot to like about him, is that he is completely open-minded when it comes to who might be involved in this particular case and how they might be involved. He's willing to look at everybody around him and give them the benefit of the doubt, whilst bearing in mind that he still needs to have his eyes open to everything, especially in such a small place.
Yeah.
Is that difficult to balance?
Well, it was difficult as as I mentioned the other day when we spoke, because I was writing some of it while I was editing Bliss, the major difficulty I had was swapping head from Bliss to Chase, because they're very different people. They have very similar attitudes towards justice and doing the right thing, but they're very different people. So yeah, keeping open-minded and making him that took a little bit of work, because I might find myself writing something that didn't quite fit with this character, so I'd have to rewrite it so that it did. But I wanted him to be, a normal, happy family man who does this, this job, and to view the world without that really deep level of skepticism. He's not burned out by the job yet. So, he is open-minded, but he's also very canny, and he has a good feel for people. And he's usually proven right about their character. I think his experience in life has given him that.
There's more I'd like to say there about what we talked about the other day about different characters and how I felt about them, and I can't say any of it because it's what we learn towards, further in. Yeah. Andrew has asked, in terms of the Huntsman, will it be available in audio at some point? There's more to the question, but I'll go back to that bit.
It's out on Audible on the 6th of January.
So what's the process? Because Andrew does like to read books on, to listen as well. What's the process been like for you of having, moving into this new area with audio?
Well, when I was with my publisher, they did that. They hooked me up with a House, who they used at the time, and they did all my Bliss books. When I moved away from my publisher, I contacted House and said, would they be interested in continuing this series with me? And they said, yeah. They kind of saw, Bliss as one of their series, kind of thing, so they did that, and they've also done all of my other books actually on Audible. So when it came to the Huntsman, but essentially what I did was just I contacted them and asked if they'd be interested. But the reason why this one is a bit late is because I held back on the Huntsman for a little while, because I was deliberating over what to do with it, because, I've never completely looked at or have decided not to go with a publisher again. So I thought, if I'm ever going to do that, the first book of a new series is probably the best time. So for a while I did consider it. And I even got as far as sending the manuscript off to a couple. But within about 2 weeks, I decided I wasn't going to go that way. So I contacted them. I said, don't even look at the submission, because I won't go forward with it. And the reason for that was just because I did a kind of pros and cons. And, if I'd have been 20, 30 years younger, I would probably have been up to sort of taking it on, But kind of start with a new publisher and accept all the negatives in the hope of the positives. I just decided it wasn't for me, because, I'm now used to setting my own deadlines. I'm now used to doing, giving my own titles, putting it up at a price that I want and doing the promotions that I want. So I'm so used to it now that I thought, why would I give all that up? And the reason you give it up is the hope that you get more readers. So it was a choice between having all of those negatives and that one positive, which is a major positive, of course. But I just thought, you know what, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm happy writing when I want to write. I'm writing what I want to write and not being pressurized into going down a different avenue. So, that's the problem. Was then I had to get the book out, and I hadn't even been in contact with House. So by the time I had, the book was coming out, and they'd only just got the manuscript. So unfortunately, that's why it's out now, but the Audible is going to be a couple of months late, and that's simply down to me because I was faffing around.
But you say you're faffing, but really what you've done is you found your groove, which is something that, most people in life strive for, just to find that thing that really works for them and then to build on it. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't unhappy doing it all myself. I mean, it's a lot of hard work goes into, publishing your own work. And, there's a considerable amount of expense as well. But because I've been doing it now for about 18 months, I'd fallen into a kind of rhythm. So, I have my editor, I have my typesetter, I have my cover designer, and I have my bloggers who I now, I go through directly to do my blog tour. So everything was in place. And the only thing I was really lacking was a wider audience. And that's a big thing. Obviously, it's something you all crave as a writer, but it wasn't the be all and end all. And I thought, if I go with a publisher and suddenly they're telling me what the title's got to be, they're telling me when my deadlines are, we're squabbling over editing and we're doing, and I just thought, no, that's not what I'm in this for at the moment. It's not why I started doing this. And frankly, I'm just too long in the tooth to do it.
You keep saying that and you're not. AJ should know because he told me he mooned me when I went past Peterborough. Okay, now that's got to be Donna. But I'll let you take that.
I didn't physically do that. She messaged me to say that she was going past Peterborough again and she was going to wave. So then at some, she messaged me again saying, "Oh, I just waved." So my response was, "Oh, I just mooned," and but I didn't actually do that.
I'm not putting anything past you, Mr. Forder. Oh, that's a really nice idea. I don't know who's Chris Whitaker, not the author Chris Whitaker, who
Chris,
lovely Chris, gets tagged in posts about the author Chris Whitaker all the time, never complains. A Bliss book where he sits in a bar with Penny and reminisces about an old case. We'd have Bliss in his prime and the irreplaceable Penny.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it?
That's lovely.
Well, I mean, yeah, Chris, I know he's a reader of my stuff, and we've had a few chats in comments in various groups, and I must say one of his comments the other day did bring a slight tear to my eye. And yeah, I mean, I the thing about a book like that is would people buy it? I don't know. I can imagine people have often said to me, will them two end up together? And I've always said no. I've been adamant about that. But never say never. So who knows?
You never know. You could write a different one. You could do a romance book. Take them off somewhere instead, and then it's not really impacting the series.
I'm incapable of writing a book like that.
I don't think you're incapable of it. Maybe just not your cup of tea.
No, it really isn't.
Cannot wait to read or listen to Tony's new book. Sam said he liked Claire. Tony, am I right in saying that Claire wears the trousers in the book and does not stand any nonsense from Andrew?
I wouldn't say she wears the trousers, but she certainly has tried them on. She is extremely forthright in her opinions. And, one of the things about Royston is that he has unwittingly and accidentally lacks a filter between what he thinks and what he says sometimes. And that came through, an accident he had on the job. However, Claire is exactly the same, but she has no excuse. It's just in her name. And Yeah, I thought the two of them being similar but very different, but similar in that one way might spark a few decent bits of dialogue. And yeah, I loved scenes where them two were together. I really did. The same I felt about it immediately. The same way I do now about Bliss and Chandler. I just feel that they, one without the other doesn't work.
And you've made them different ages though, so that's going to cause some problems.
What have I done?
Made them different ages.
Oh yeah, she's much older, but yeah, she is nearing retirement age at which she can retire, but not at mandatory. So yes, I can give her a short life or a longer life in the job. Yeah, I
You
mean,
like
as you said
making a
the
rod
other
for
day,
your own back, don't you?
well, as you said the other day, you never quite know when I might kill somebody off, so leave the door open.
I do love it when I can't trust an author to keep the people that I like. And I did name an author to you. Who knows how cross I am? I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to give anybody else a spoiler
Oh,
alert.
I got loads of people outraged, not genuinely outraged, but really disappointed when I killed somebody off. Yeah, a lot of people said they'd never forgive me for it.
Yeah,
Hopefully they have.
you've got to get over it. It is what it is, and I think it makes it more exciting. If I can't trust an author not to kill off my favourite character,
Hmm.
then where's that fire when you're reading something? Where's that? If you know they're not going to kill somebody off,
Hmm.
surely you can't. It removes the level of emotion.
Well, yeah, I think that kind of makes certain things that you write work better than others because you might write something um, as I did in the Autumn Tree, which makes people think one thing when really something else has happened. So you can get away with that if people aren't, if people are not quite knowing for certain which way you're going and how far you would go in terms of killing people off or creating danger and havoc for people. And I don't. The only thing I've constantly and consistently said is that I won't kill Jimmy Bliss off, but I could be lying. So.
Oh, you're going to get me in all kinds of trouble for this interview. Absolutely. Steve Munoz says the three have a great backstory to be told. So I know Kaz likes to ask about spin-off novellas. Do you think you'd give any of them a spin-off, or are you just planning on feeding it through the stories as you go through the series?
Are we talking about the Huntsman still?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's backstory to be told, but I wrote this very differently to how I write Bliss. And one of the decisions I made was that I would have less backstory and less introspection from the main characters. Jimmy Bliss is a very introspective character. I spend a little bit of time inside his head in the book. And I didn't really do that with these. And that was a conscious decision because one is really, I suppose, to keep the pace up. But the other is because I knew I was writing a series, I decided to kind of ladle out the backstory in bits and pieces. So there will be a bit more and a bit more and a bit more as the series progresses, until you know a lot more about them. But I wanted this one to kind of the backstory to be observational in terms of there's a chapter when he's at home and he's got a family life. He doesn't think about it. He's not introspective about it. It just is. So I wanted this book to be very different to Bliss in that way, because I didn't want people thinking of Bliss and Chandler. I wanted people to think of Chase and Laney.
And I've got to say, from picking it up and starting reading, you've absolutely nailed that. I was not thinking, oh, this is a cardboard cutout of Bliss.
Mm.
I was thinking about what I was reading.
Well, that's great because obviously it was the objective, and it wasn't always easy to achieve because, as I say, I was still writing Bliss at the time, or editing at least. So there could be potential for crossover. But I think that was the other thing. It made me kind of slow down a little bit in my writing, and because the characters were new to me, that made me slow down as well. With Bliss and Chandler, I can just write, and I know what they're going to say to each other before I've even got to the scene. Whereas for these two, I had to do it as it was there. I got to a scene, I had to feel them out a little bit, and that helped. It helped slow things down, and it helped me focus to a certain degree.
Chris said the new book is a superb book by an author at the top of his game.
Wow, that's very nice to hear. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I mean, the response has been overwhelming. I had I always release a book with very few expectations, even if I like it personally. This one was a real, nail biter because I really didn't know. I knew my ARC readers liked it, but sometimes I feel they might be overly generous towards me because they know me.
You've met Leslie, right?
I mean, in the end, it was just, it's been fantastic. And some people said that they like this one best of all. Personally, I'm not sure I would agree with that because I think my favourite is still the Autumn Tree. But I like this one better than I thought I might as a first book. And it really has now inspired me to get into the second one.
For anybody who doesn't understand the comment about Leslie's my friend, who is one of the most honest, but in such a lovely way, people that I've ever met, and I send her anything that I write. And
yes. Now, Leslie has said that she loves the character, but she said she loves the character so often that I wonder if she doesn't like the story. I'm not sure.
Oh no, she'd tell you.
Yeah, but she did. She said she enjoyed the book, but she always focuses on the characters, which I'm glad about because for me, I mean, you love a good storyline, but I consider myself more a character writer.
Somebody's put a really good comment. This is Chris again. If he kills off Jimmy Bliss, Donna will kidnap him misery style and have him brought back to life so we're safe there. You are never, ever, ever going to be allowed to stop writing Bliss. I don't know how you're going to get away with it.
No, well, I mean, you know what? I'm a huge fan of Michael Connolly and the Harry Bosch series, but I have to say the last few books of his I haven't really enjoyed because Harry's just past it now. I'm afraid, physically, and he's in story. He's about 70 now, and that just doesn't work for me. So there's no way I'm going to allow Jimmy Bliss to go that far.
Just going to have to go back and, I don't know, start from his childhood.
It's suggested to me that I do, books prior to Bad to the Bone. I don't think I'll do that either. But I haven't actually ruled out having Penny Chandler as the main character and kind of getting advice from Bliss as she goes along. I haven't ruled that out.
See, that's nice. I always like it when somebody brings a detective back and they sit in the pub and they have a drink and talk about things. I always really like that because you need that wisdom, and there's always a warmth to a scene like that.
Well, Ian Rankin's done it with Rebus, obviously, and it's worked very well. I mean, I have no idea whether he intended to bring him back, but he has done, and he's had some very successful books since. And I think Penny Chandler could hold a small series herself, but there's no way that she would continue in that job without seeking advice from her mentor. So
I do like the idea that you could do this with Alison May as well, who is the PCSO in this book.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Claire Laney, who's a bit older, as you said, Royston Chase, and somebody wants you to explain where his name came from. It did make me laugh that you did actually say it in the book as well.
I did, yeah, I explained why he was called Royston.
Yeah, which I just really, but you can explain that as well. And because obviously Chase is older than May as well, you've got that element of she could go anywhere and be anything.
Yeah, well, I kind of like having those different ages and different stages of career. I think that works quite well, or at least it did for me in the writing, because you kind of have to put yourself in a different mindset of, their age and their rank, what they've done, Alison May is right at the beginning of her career, but she's so keen and so eager that she could go on to be almost anything. And so I mean, she has potential to become something. And the thing is, people keep talking about spin-offs. I've been asked, when am I going to do a follow-up to Degrees of Darkness? When am I going to do another Mike Lynch book? Will I ever write a second Sidney Mallow book? And I mean, if I could have 72 hours in a day for the next 20 years, I might get all these things written. But maybe at best I'll probably write 5 books over 2 years, which is still good going. And you can only publish that way if you publish it yourself or through an independent publisher. Otherwise, it's kind of 1 book a year. So it's still good going, but there aren't enough hours in the day to write it all. So my focus now is Bliss and now Chase, and that is has to be my focus for the next year or so.
Oh, somebody's asking a sensible question. Let's see who dares to approach us with some sense. It's Donna. No way. I'm not having it, Donna. Have you had a bang to the head, my darling? Is it getting harder to keep up with police procedure? Is it changing quickly?
Yes and no. It is, but of course, I love the part where it's fiction and you can make stuff up. I've been reading a book by Colin Sutton. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah.
He's the detective. They did the show on him a couple of times for his investigations, and I was reading him, and it really pleased me, something that he said, because he was talking about the protocols and procedures, and he said they have to be in place in order to make things orderly. However, jobs get done by knowing how to avoid them. And I thought, from somebody who's been there, done it, been an SIO, been a DCI, for someone like him to admit that they do go around all the rules and regulations if they can to get a job done, that really pleased me, because there are some people who say you should be a stickler for every single rule there is, every part of pace you have to adhere to. And I think, yes, within reason. I mean, I wouldn't ever have my characters doing something completely outlandish, that they, carrying Glocks with them everywhere and all that kind of stuff, having shoot ups.
Might be fun if you did.
Yeah, it would. But by the same token, you have to always realise that it's fiction. However, I do follow procedure as much as possible. And actually, for this book, I consulted with Graham Bartlett.
You did?
Yeah, because I was a little bit dubious about whether Royston would be allowed to investigate this case, how long he'd be able to investigate it for, and what the approach would be by the senior officers. I'd actually written it, most of it, and I thought to myself, oh, okay, is this feasible? So, I contacted Graham, and I kind of bought some time off of him, as it were, and I asked my questions, and he was great with his responses. And I kind of worked within the limitations that he said. I mean, he said there's always room for manoeuvre. You know, of course they will want it investigated because people have died, but at the same time, they might be reluctant to go in this direction or that direction. You know, so I wanted to make sure it was feasible before I actually, put it into print. But yeah, I was he after speaking to him or after sort of consulting with him, I felt a lot better about what I was writing. And procedures do change. I mean, it's not that long ago that you'd have to wait like 6 weeks for DNA results, and now it's so much quicker. It's ridiculous. But you have to change stuff. You can't wait the length of time it might take for a proper autopsy to be done. You can't. Your book can't wait that long often.
Yeah.
You have to speed some things up, and you have to kind of work around other things that might genuinely get in the way. I mean, budget is one of them. I've only recently started introducing things in terms of budget, but of course, over the last few years, it's become, not a popular thing, an extremely unpopular thing. But there is less money around, less detectives around. I mean, they're actually taking on detectives now who haven't been cops before. So things have changed, and yes, you do have to keep up with it. And I do as much research as I possibly can at the time, and I try to be as authentic as I possibly can be.
And you do a lot of research, and we probably can't talk about most of the research because it gives too much away, I'd imagine. But you did find out that a certain thing with, shall we say, an appendage, you actually researched that.
I did. Yes. Well, I didn't. When I wrote it, it then struck me as thinking, well, is that even possible? And I thought, well, yeah, in the accident and the wrenching that would happen in the accident, it might be possible. It must be possible. But I did research it, and yeah, I mean,
Do you think what comes up when you type that into Google?
well, there are various ways of typing it in, and there are various responses that you get. And genuinely just asking that particular question did come up with some, eyebrow raising responses. But yeah, I mean, there are cases. There are actually cases which are known about where that has happened.
Got a couple more comments to read here. Tony Millinson says, "Penny with a handgun, not a good thing." Donald's also asked another sensible question. Now you're writing the new series, do you have any idea of where you want to go with each character, their series arc, or are you going to wing it?
With these new characters, no, I do have a good idea of where these characters are going. But that's not to say that won't change because, because I'm not a real plotter. When I've tried to plot, I find myself changing it so much that it kind of negates the point of plotting. So I have a good idea of where these characters are going over the next certainly the next book and the one after that. And I have a good idea where I'd like them to go. But as I say, in the writing of these next books, things might change that point in a different direction, and you have to kind of make a decision that best suits you.
Steve says the Huntsman felt very authentic, very real, and I have to say it does. I mean, we talked about the emotions I had reading it. Things that actually physically brought me to tears.
Yeah.
Things that really made me cackle laughing. And there's so many things that there's people and situations that you're rooting for in one way or another. There's people that you would quite like to have been in that vehicle at the time. And even the bad characters, you've done them so well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you want your good guys to be loved and your bad guys to be hated as much as possible, and sometimes there's people in between. but you don't want to make them overtly one way or the other. Everyone has their flaws, and some more than others. And yeah, I like writing bad characters, um, but as you know, I don't write overly graphical scenes. I prefer to leave that to the reader's imagination and to be steered by what I've written, so that they will know what has occurred without me, spelling it out for them. And there will be certain things I leave untouched, but again, they're not. It's not. I'm not failing to tie up a loose thread. It's kind of, let me just leave this out for you to contemplate. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of humor in it, because otherwise it would be too dark, and this
Yeah,
is
definitely.
such a dark subject. So there's humor in it, but you also have to touch with the reality, and there is bound to be a huge amount of emotion in terms of, especially how I ended the book. That is bound to spill over, and you can't not write that either.
And it does leave you with lingering thoughts and questions and feelings that we again can't talk about. I've just spotted a comment there and looked, and I thought it sounded like Leslie, and it is. I would have liked this one darker.
Isn't that precisely what I said to you the other day?
That's what made me laugh. I knew it was going to be from Leslie.
Yeah, I know Leslie would. I know that she likes a bit more gore and gruesome stuff in her books. But and I won't shy away from that if I ever want to write it. I mean, I kind of came close in Degrees of Darkness, and to a certain degree in Slow Slicing,
Mm.
gruesome parts in both of those books, but they were kind of necessary for the plot. This, I didn't think I needed to get graphical for the plot to work. I just felt it worked better without it.
I
And
did say to you that I was certainly glad that some scenes weren't elaborated on, because the own horror story you write in your own head when you're reading a book is enough to fill the gaps in. So that's quite.
yeah,
That
it's an
lightness of
extreme
touch with that was,
it's an
yeah.
extremely fine balance, and you have to find that balance. And sometimes it'll work, and sometimes it won't. With this, I was absolutely certain right from the beginning that, because it was such a dark subject matter, I wouldn't specifically write scenes that showed you how awful it was, but you would know how awful they was. Oh, they were. What terrible grammar that was.
It's all right. I'm not editing you as you talk. We're fine. We have hit 8 o'clock.
Oh no.
That went really fast.
If there's if there are any questions left unanswered, I will go online a bit later and I will respond to them.
I don't think we've missed anything. I think. Oh, Leslie Ray, what a nice comment to end with. I loved the book exactly as it is.
Terrific. That's good.
And I would agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's gone too fast.
Well, thank you so much. Do you want to show off the cover again and give everyone a quick reminder of why they need to go and buy it? Because you do.
Well, I don't know. Is it for me to say why you should go and buy it? Well, okay, you should go and buy it because it's absolutely brilliant. There you go.
And it's not a lie. It's absolutely true. You are allowed to own it when you do something well.
Yeah, I'm very reluctant to do that, because certain people already talk about the size of my head. So.
Oh, there was a comment, and I can't. No, I don't know. I can't read that out, Donna. People are looking at me weird when I'm peeing myself, shall we say. Sat on a train laughing at us. Thank you so much to the members and the admins for questions.
Yes, thank you
and
for
joining
everybody
in.
who asked a question or just signed in to say hello. It's much appreciated, and I'll be in touch later.
And thank you so much for coming back and talking to me.
Thank you for saying. I've really enjoyed it, and we had a great chat the other day, and this has been great as well. But yeah, it's gone so quickly, but I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.